And then the final rule that you'll see using the sample rule set here is the create component rule. Now again, this is used to call another rule set within your current configuration. So the example I gave earlier was the bike. If you have a rule set defined for the wheel, and in the bike rule set, if you select the custom wheel, it'll call all the rules, including the manufacturing rules from the other rule set, and bring them into your current configuration. So the key thing to remember here is that any manufacturing rules that you have in this lower level rule set, you want to make sure that the top level or the first BOM component rule represents, or not represents, is linked back to the parent item. Also the item, this lower level component also must be marked as job configurable in Syteline to return a job, as we talked about earlier. Okay, so in order to reference your parent component, one of the system variables that you could use, you'll see that in the last bullet point here, is ISYS parent component. Maybe use if this is applicable. So if the component that you're calling is going to be a sub job of the parent item that you're configuring, you would want to use that. System variable. Okay, so those are all the rules that you're going to see in our example rule set here. And I'm just going to close this out. Okay, so this is kind of the structure that we're going to be building in our customer hours rule set here. And the structure that I built, it's not really building anything. It's just building a customer hours part. But what I did here was use all items that already existed in the Syteline application demo database. So if you have the application demo database in your environment, you could plug in this rule set, make a few changes to some of the manufactured items to mark them as job configurable or not, and then run this rule set in your environment so you can see how it works. Okay, so that's kind of what we're building here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this, what the structure is, and then we're going to go into the rule set and see how we've built this in Design Studio. Okay, so our top level configured item is customer hours. Okay, and for the component ID for this is ISYS cur part. Okay, so that's just going to make the component ID, it's actually going to make that customer hours. That's what that system variable does. Okay, and underneath that customer hours part, we have a purchase part. So that's a ZAL 400 item. Its component ID is going to be ZAL 400. Again, it's unique within our rule set. The parent component ID is ISYS cur part, again linking it back to that parent item, or in this case our configured item. Okay, and that's just a purchase part. That's a purchase part that exists in Syteline. Okay, the next item that we're going to have at our parent operation 10 is going to be FA 20,000. Again, its unique component ID is FA 20,000, and its parent component ID, linking it back to that top level job, is ISYS cur part. Okay, and this item is a manufactured item that we've marked as job configurable in Syteline. So Syteline knows to get its BOM and routing structure from the configurator. Okay, and FA 20,000 actually has one operation in it that I've defined, and that's TDCI, and that's operation 30. Okay, and that is that has an item in it. Okay, so here's our FA 20,000 part. It has the TDCI support item, and this does not exist in Syteline, and I just created this to show you that it actually put it on the BOM. Its parent component ID is not ISYS cur part, but FA 20,000. Okay, since it is going to create a sub job for the FA 20,000 and be part of that BOM and routing structure. Okay, the FA 30,000. Okay, that is a manufactured item that's not configurable in Syteline. Okay, I've still defined a BOM and routing structure in here just to show you that even though you have it defined and it's not been marked as configurable, it's going to pull the current BOM. So again, its unique component ID is FA 30,000. and its parent component ID is ISYS current part, linking it back to the top level job. That's everything in operation 10 of the customer hours part. In operation 20, we have TA10000, which is a manufactured item that's been marked as configurable in Syteline. Again, its unique component ID is TA10000, and its parent component ID is ISYS car part. Now, you don't have to use the part number as a component ID. It's just something I like to do. But if you use that item multiple times in your rule set, you could just increment that by TA10001 or TA10000A, B, C, etc. Again, we're linking it back to that customer hours part using its parent component ID, which is ISYS car part. And then in operation TA10000, we have an operation 40. And at that operation 40, we have a purchase item, which is WP10000, which is an item that exists in Syteline. Okay, and it'll be created at operation 40 for the TA10000. And then the last thing that we have at operation 20 of the customer hours part is TA20000, and that has a child operation 30 in it. Again, we're linking it back to the parent, again using the parent component ID. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually going to be a different rule set that we're calling. Okay, so it's going to have its own component ID. So even though these are the same, since this is going to be a totally different rule set using that create component rule, okay, which is calling another rule set, the configurator will set this to be TA20000 since this is a different rule set entirely. Okay, and its parent component ID. Now, since this is a different rule set, this is a lower level rule set, I'm using the system variable ISYS parent component, which is going to set its parent component ID to be ISYS car part, because that's the rule set that I've called it from. Okay, and again, I'm going to go through this in a little bit detail now. Detail in Design Studio, I just wanted to talk through this. And again, all these exist in the SL demo database, so that you can just plug this rule set in and mark the FA20000 as job configurable, FA30000 is not configurable, the TA10000 as configurable, and the TA20000 as configurable, and you can run this rule set and see how it works in your environment. Okay, so now let's take a look at this in Design Studio and see how we've built out this sample BOM and routing structure. Okay, so I have my top level component. Okay, that's my customer hours part. Okay, that's the configured item that I'm going to order from the customer order line. Okay, again, it has its parent component ID, ISYS car part. I just left the system variable in there as I discussed earlier for the config component sequence. It's part number of ISYS car part. Put in a quantity. And again, it does not have an operation number since it's the top level job, even though it has operations defined for it. Okay, then I've got my operation 10 in here, and again, we're linking that operation 10 back to that configured item. Okay, and I just have my operation number in here and a work center ID. It's all I've defined. Got my item, ZAL400. Okay, and you see how this is linking it back to that parent component with ISYS car part. Okay, I have a part number in here that exists that does not exist, or that actually exists in Syteline in this case. Let's set this to 0 for now. I have a quantity and again an operation number that has been defined for this parent item. And then I've got a work instruction for operation 10, again with a component ID of ISYS car part, linking it back to that BOM component rule. And then I've got just a test work instruction for customer hours in here. And then, so I've got operation 10, and then I also have operation 20. Okay? As we saw over here in our rule set, the parent operation had operation 10 and 20. And again, I am linking it back to the parent using that component ID.